Night after night, I couldn't sleep. I start eventually going down these like forum rabbit holes, which I do not suggest doing. It was very like alarming because then there would be stories of people kind of like stuck like this for so long. And so that was my fear. Like they would talk about sleep anxiety and, you know, just this fixation on your sleep. And that's what I started doing.
We always want to be happy, right? Everybody's like, I just want to be happy, just want to be happy. But that's just not a realistic state for us to live in all the time.
Yeah.
And I believe that when we feel sad or when we feel mad, I found a lot of power of leaning into that emotion.
Yes.
As opposed to try to avoid it.
My whole journey with this was about 3.5 months. Some people might be like, oh, that's nothing. Oh, that's a lot. But for me, it feels like, thank the Lord, because I know so many people that it's just decades and decades that they're on these things. And then it is, I'm talking years, commonly years to get off of them.
Once you start sleeping well, there's nothing that could make me want to miss out on sleep. You know,
totally.
Let's go, you know, like go out, this, that. I was like, I'll see you in the morning. How about breakfast?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. I'm a much better version of me and breakfast anyway.
Like better anyways. Welcome to the Built for Growth podcast. As you see, we are comfy here in Mollie's home. Today is going to be a great conversation. I really enjoyed everything that we talked about, Mollie. There's just so much about sleep optimization that I think is important and the listeners are going to love. Tell us a little bit about who you are and why it's valuable to listen to what you say.
Yes. Well, it's because I went through my own struggles with my sleep. I was an insomniac about a decade ago. I went through this period of insomnia that completely changed the course of my life. And when going down the rabbit hole to restore my sleep, became absolutely fascinated with sleep. And so I hope you, by virtue of the conversations we get into today, also become just as fascinated. And on the other side of that, today, this company, Sleep is a Skill, that I ended up creating because of that fascination, one, changed the course of my life. I mean, again, I never anticipated being in the world of sleep, and now I can't imagine another life than this. Two, I would say I've just had the privilege of being able to interview amazing people like yourself. So now we've had over 250 episodes with different experts in various arenas, including performance and how they manage their sleep. Additionally, we have a long-running newsletter, online courses. We have one of the largest Oura Ring databases from a sleep optimization standpoint. So lots of data to support some of the things that we get into today. Do be mindful, we went into lots of tangents and we were doing a mashup. So if anything was left open looped, please don't hesitate to reach out to me for further clarification. It's like my biggest passion is this topic. So if anything was unclear or you have additional questions, absolutely reach out. But lastly, I would just say the knowledge that sleep is a skill. So if you are struggling, that this is just a matter of the information that we'll dive into to support you, because we can totally transform this area.
I love that. We talked about everything, vitamin D, sleep hygiene, so many things that, the potential downsides of being on sleep medications, which you were on. I mean, they were just, it's a plethora. We talked a little bit about kids and helping them with their circadian rhythms, what I like to do to help me get to sleep. So again, it was fantastic. And thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's such an honor. And thanks for kicking off this first sort of edition of literally an in-bed podcast. Not like the fortune cookie, like in bed. Like this is actually in bed.
You're literally in bed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so good. Slumber party. Yay. This is so cool. I'm so happy you're like the kickoff for this. This is amazing.
I'm so happy too. This is awesome. As we were saying before, it's like, a different kind of set, a different kind of vibe.
A very different set. Yes.
Yeah.
Nothing if not unique. Right. My whole life has been that. So, it's gotta be.
And I think we were saying too, is like, I got here and we're like, we're doing your podcast or doing my podcast. We decided
and now
it's a joint podcast. We're going to merge this.
Yeah, we are. This is going to be fantastic. All really sleep all the time.
Yes. So how did this whole scenario, for those who are watching or maybe just listening, we're sitting on a bed.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Really that's helpful.
Comfy.
Exactly.
And how did this come about? Like, it's part of the theme, right?
It's part of the theme. Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I was not planning it. So about a decade ago, I was traveling internationally with my husband, who you just met. And we've been together 14 years. But at the beginning of our travel journey, I started dealing with insomnia, which I never dealt with in my life. And for the definition, insomnia is difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep.
Were you a good sleeper before that, or you were just
great question.
Great.
No, I wasn't a good sleeper, but I thought of myself as someone who could sleep. And when you're going through insomnia, it's suddenly like, well, can I sleep? It's no longer guaranteed. But before that, I had a lot of labels and narratives with my sleep. So I'd say things like, I'm a short sleeper, I'm a night owl, it's in my genes, I'll sleep when I'm dead,
I hear so many people say that, oh, I'm a night owl, and I prefer to be, and I'm just like, well, I think you don't have a good circadian rhythm then. I don't think that naturally, I don't believe that most, if any, people are designed to, be awake at night and fall asleep as the sun comes up.
Well, you're exactly right. We are diurnal creatures, meaning we're meant to be active by day and at rest at night. And when we start deviating from that, which, I can keep using myself as an example, what not to do. I was deviating from that. Like I was doing all the upside down things. So basically, my husband and I, we work with a lot of high stakes poker players now. And initially we would be living often just like those poker players, like going to bed super, super late in darkened environments, barely getting outside, living in Manhattan, like just a circadian bomb. And entrepreneurs. And so stress to the max. And so that stress then manifested with sleep. And the big thing for me too was like when we were traveling, it was so impactful to me because night after night I couldn't sleep. I start eventually going down these like forum rabbit holes, which I do not suggest doing. It was very like alarming because then there would be stories of people kind of like stuck like this for so long. And so that was my fear. Like they would talk about sleep anxiety and, just this fixation on your sleep. And that's what I started doing. Because then I would just be like, well, can I sleep tonight? I don't know.
And the anxiety about it gets worse and it becomes more of an issue, right?
Exactly. The fear of the fear. Mm-hmm. So I finally go to the doctors and I leave with sleeping pills, which was not, I was hoping that I would walk in and there'd be a plan or some sort of, thing that I could do. But no. It was sleeping pills. And if anyone's listening and hearing this or watching, I definitely want to underscore that there are other things that we can do, and that's not supposed to be first line treatment. But unfortunately for me, that was what I was given. And I come from a family with a lot of mental health issues and pharmaceutical use. So when that happened for me, it was like, oh no, is this the beginning? So I start taking these sleeping pills though, because I want to start sleeping again. But then it's like night after night, this fear of, am I stuck like this? So I dive down the rabbit hole to learn everything I possibly can. And what I learn totally changes my life. Now, not only does it get me sleeping again, but it gets me fascinated in this world of sleep, like chronobiology, the science of time and how time affects your biology, circadian rhythm entrainment, which had me turn my schedule upside down, like to what you were talking about in a good way, like the opposite of how I was living before that, actually aligned with the rhythms of nature, which was life-changing. But in the process had me really see, I need to start this company. So I started Sleep as a Skill. Today we have a top sleep podcast, with over 250 episodes with tons of sleep experts.
Which is funny because I was listening to it before I met you. Like years before.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I started listening to it. I still have a couple episodes that are saved that I have bookmarked. I was going back through and, of course, as we were going to sit down and talk, I was kind of refreshing myself. And I was like, yes, this is right. I've heard this podcast because I believe sleep is so important.
Funny story. I walked into Mollie's home where we filmed this episode and I immediately noticed her Leela quantum tech block. And I just love that more and more people are not afraid to explore the different ways of tapping into our energy fields. And I know that there's a lot of skepticism around EMF protection, but it's just like the more that I look into it, the more it raises questions, and I love questions. And I think about the EMFs from a lot of things, like our Wi-Fi and our phones, and like how could that be impacting us? And what I'm realizing is that Leela's products are designed to help and harmonize your energy and protect you from these EMFs. And the research is definitely compelling. It's interesting. There are over 48 studies, including double-blind trials, showing benefits like 29% more ATP, and that's your body's energy, faster cell recovery, and even like improvement in your brain and your heart rate balance. So I think that the research suggests that Leela's approach is worth exploring. So go to LeelaQ.com and see their studies, check out their website, and a wide variety of products. Everything from jewelry, which is totally my style of jewelry, by the way, to clothing, to cards that are easy to fit in your wallet, to the block I always talk about that Mollie had in her home. And I also do. You can use code MIESHA, that's MIESHA, for 10% off your first purchase. Or if you're interested in an ongoing service and having things like your entire home or your car covered, then check out quantumupgrade.com and get the entire service free for 15 days when you use the same promo code MIESHA.
I personally am a great sleeper most of the time. Like if you don't mess with me,
I remember you saying that. And at Beam, you're like, I have been mastering in sleep.
But I've prioritized it. I really think that sleep hygiene is really important.
Yes.
I think that having a ritual, I'm big on getting morning light every single morning.
Yes.
These kinds of things are really, really important. But, I was going to say that it's just like, people miss that sometimes and they don't get into it. And then when you get prescribed sleeping pills, correct me if I'm wrong, I think when you have a sleeping pill, the sleep that you get isn't necessarily restorative because you're not going through this different sleep realms. You're just unconscious.
Yeah, it's this sedation over sleep. So you're totally correct. Now, I will say there's nuances to different types of sleeping pills. So the type I was given was in the benzodiazepine family, which we were really concerned about. Because it's not approved for long-term use. So if anyone is listening and maybe taking this or considering, I highly suggest checking out. We have episodes with the Benzo Information Coalition, which is a nonprofit dedicated to helping educate on the perils of long-term benzo use. So benzos and Z drugs, which are kind of like sister type drugs, those are also concerning for long-term use as well. Now there's other medications that people might explore for kind of off-label use, like trazodone for sleep. Sometimes people are given antidepressants with the idea that some of them might skew and support sleep. So there's a whole world of this. But to your point, yes, it will absolutely impact the architecture of our sleep in various ways, depending on the medication, but particularly the highest concern with those benzos and Z drugs. But we still see so many people being prescribed these. Yeah. And once you're on these, it is so challenging to get off of them.
Why?
And so, okay, a couple reasons. So one, the thinking for the short-term use is like something really acute has happened. Maybe there's like a death in the family or, maybe you're in a hospital and you need like sleep now. So we'll give you these medications. It'll kind of get you in the realm of sleep, but not real sleep. But once you're taking it for the long term, it's impacting your entire nervous system and dimming and dulling that nervous system response. And then when you stop taking that, you can just imagine that then there's something kind of known as this rebound insomnia, rebound anxiety that can come out on the other side of that. So every reason that you started taking these initially is now going to come back, but not only come back, but come back with a vengeance. So now you're dealing with like a tsunami of a problem than you had before. And then on top of that, if you're dealing with this kind of rebound insomnia, then you can be now withdrawing from these medications and not sleeping. And these can be really dangerous too. If done over the long term, people can have seizures and unfortunately you can die if you do it really dramatically. So that's why education around how to properly do it.
Off of these things?
Yes. And I've interacted with many different clients that have had very close calls with, they tried like cold turkey. And that's the problem with the lack of education is, and doctors often don't know, unfortunately, either. So they're, oh, you've been on these for a long time, let's get you off. And then thinking that it can just be this quick process, right?
How long were you on them?
So thankfully, and this is why I'm so passionate on this topic, because I feel like I kind of dodged a bullet because my whole journey with this was about 3.5 months. And that's, I don't know how it could land for some people. Some people might be like, oh, that's nothing. Oh, that's a lot. But for me, it feels like, thank the Lord, because I know so many people that it's just decades and decades that they're on these things. And then I'm talking years, commonly years to get off of them, to the point that when you're getting off, you're getting down like slivers of it to like kind of taper.
Yeah.
It's a journey.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've been through the thick of it, which I think that goes along with your story, right? When you started not sleeping well.
Yes.
You started getting these medications and it didn't fix the problem.
Exactly.
So then you...
Yeah. So in that process of the restoring of my sleep, getting my sleep to kind of come back on track, and I can tell you, like, before we hit record, I was sharing that during the midst of it, I was so at rock bottom, and it was scary. Some of the thoughts that I was having were just like, I can't go on like this, and this is also really common with insomnia too, because, kind of mental health and sleep are so intimately connected. And so then suddenly if you're going without sleep for stretches of time, just the mood piece can become so impaired. Mm-hmm. And so just some of the thoughts that I was having is like, just really out of character. But I'm also grateful on the other side of this because it had me really get responsible for areas of my life that were just not working, So, and that's really part of my message for so many people that might be struggling now, but so many people are dealing with, and this is for insomnia. Now, some people listening might be like, I'm sleeping fine. Like, I just want to improve my sleep, which we can talk to too. But as it relates to insomnia, that difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, my message is really clear that there's a gift available when we're not sleeping well, because often it's the body really, at this point, pretty much screaming, saying, hello, like there's things that we got to do. And this can be this pathway to growth. I know we're talking about kids being a pathway to growth. And the same rules, I believe, apply. I don't have kids, so I can't speak to that piece, which sounds amazing. But at least certainly with sleep, then it's going to have us tap in just about every area of life that might be bleeding into our results with sleep. Yeah. So meaning, like, if your relationship isn't working, like, we're going to have to deal with this, and otherwise you're not going to sleep or sleep as well as you thought. Finances aren't working. If your health and well-being isn't working, if your lifestyle, like we'll certainly talk about the circadian rhythm piece, and so much more can show up in your sleep. So sleep can act as this barometer of the workability of your life, this mirror of the workability of your life. And that's really the magic, I think.
That's so powerful. I like that. I like that a lot. I think I've always been a good sleeper, for the most part, but there are certainly times in my life that I'm not sleeping well, or I don't fall asleep right when I want to. And I feel this sense of anxiety.
Yes.
The moment that I know that I have to set my alarm or I have to get up early, like if there's a flight, anytime that I know that I have to wake up before I would naturally wake up, I get anxiety.
Yes. Anticipatory anxiety.
Yes.
Exactly.
I'm anticipating, like, is my alarm going to go off? I'm going to set 2 of them, and then I just get tense. So I'd like to share with you like a couple of things that I do.
That was literally going to be one of my questions.
Okay,
Yay.
Okay.
So on our mashup podcast. Okay, great.
Yeah. So feel free to ask whenever you want to ask.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful.
What I do, from somebody who is not an expert, but it's just something that I have found that works really well for me, is that when I lay down and I'm feeling anxious about, will I be able to fall asleep? It's happened to me on this road trip. So I'm on a road trip right now. We're in Austin. We're at your house. It's beautiful. And, I'm sleeping in a bed with my 2 kids. They're kicking me at night and everything. And sometimes, I've had to wake up. I've lost 2 hours coming here, right?
Yes.
So the time change.
Exactly.
And then I'm, if I'm starting something at 9 a.m., that means I'm usually waking up at 7, my time, 7 here, which is like 5 a.m. my time.
Yes.
That's unnatural for me.
Yeah,
Normally I'm waking up at the sunrise time, 6:30, 7 o'clock, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been dealing with a bit of, I hope I get good sleep tonight. I hope I could fall asleep tonight. And I'm awake. And what I realize is that and I can switch this like a switch, is that I'm holding, as my mind is still on, I'm tired, but I want to be sleepy. And I think that's a big difference. Sometimes people feel exhausted, but they don't clearly feel sleepy.
Yes.
Okay, that's a big distinction.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, morning light, I know you're a big fan of it. That's a big one, because that actually starts your circadian rhythm to let you cue later, right? That you're going to produce melatonin at 12 to 16 hours later.
Yes.
And you're going to produce serotonin when you wake up. But when we're on the road trip and, things are just different, or you're just traveling, things are different. Or you haven't started this yet. And so you don't understand, the great benefits of cueing your body for sleep. So you're actually like, I'm so ready for sleep, not just stressed. But in the case of me being stressed, when I flip that switch, is that I realize that I'm holding tension in my body as I'm laying on my pillow trying to sleep. So what do we have to do when we go to sleep? We have to let go of all the tension in our face, in our jaw, in our shoulders, and as we're thinking about things. So I encourage maybe the listeners, to think back to a time when they've thought about something that really excited them or potentially, drew some nervousness. Maybe you're watching one of my fights, right?
Yes, I love it. Yeah.
And you're just like, and you're holding tension in your shoulders and, your face, and you're in that moment and you're awake and it's vibrant and great. Okay. Well, we lay our bodies down and then our mind is still racing.
Yeah.
So we're still physically holding tension a lot of times in our muscles, in our body, which is also, I feel like, a cue of like being awake. So what I start to do is try to release the tension. Okay, like, I'm holding tension. Okay, release the tension, cognitively, like consciously.
Yeah.
Release that tension and the tension in my face. And if I really want to get down to it, I'll take a deep breath in and I'll start from the top of my head and I'll start releasing the tension in my eyebrows, releasing the tension in my, cheekbones, releasing the tension, in my jaw.
A great body scan.
And then another breath and then body, exactly. Going down my body, releasing, relaxing, trying to melt into the bed.
Yeah.
And then I'll start from my toes and I'll kind of work the way back up towards my head. And usually by that point, then I'm out.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's literally one part of the physical recommendations. So you nailed it. Okay. So that's one piece. And then I can also throw in too, in addition, if people are like, maybe, because it sounds like you've been able to like make this work. For some people, maybe they bring this in and then they get to all parts of their limbs or whatever. And then I'm still awake. What do I do? If that is them, then a couple things. One, removing all the pressure in general from sleep is part of what our ongoing goal is, because so much of sleep and pressure don't go well together commonly. And of course, like you're saying, that's what people immediately feel when they say, well, that's nice and a theory, but I got to get up tomorrow and I got to get up earlier than normal or whatever, or there's an important thing that I got to do or a fight or whatever. And so when that's the case, it's this weird paradoxical intent, which is actually an approach too. So paradoxical intent is where you're actually trying to stay awake, which is for especially an insomniac, can oddly be helpful, where you're saying like, oh no, I'm going to open my eyes. I'm going to look up at the ceiling. I'm going to keep staying awake. I'm going to, keep reading or whatever. And that is one approach where you can actually backfire or not backfire. It's a back end approach.
I like that. That's really interesting. I've never thought about that before, but I apply this scenario in many other parts of my life, like leaning into emotions, right? We tend to think of, being sad. Like we always want to be happy, right? Everybody's like, I just want to be happy. Just want to be happy. But that's just not a realistic state for us to live in all the time.
Yeah.
And I believe that when we feel sad or when we feel mad, I've found a lot of power of leaning into that emotion.
Yes.
As opposed to try to avoid it.
I'm going through this literally actively right now in my life, because I think for what I've seen for myself, I was sharing with you, like coming from a background, my mom had me at like 19, I grew up with like no money, on welfare in a trailer. Like there were certain things that navigating that I think now I'm finally dealing with in adulthood. And we're talking about trauma and what have you. And so much of what I've been ongoingly discovering for myself and with clients and what have you is leaning in to these emotions and allowing them to be there versus the resistance. And because as you know, like with sleep, if we start resisting it, that's what I was doing, was like, oh no, I'm too awake. What am I going to do? And then I'm noticing, and then that even activates you even more.
Right. Or even resisting the idea of resisting sleep, which is, I think, what you were talking about too, is like they're trying so hard to sleep that they're just like fighting themselves, where it's like, okay, maybe we do it in reverse, and you're like, well, I'm gonna try to stay awake, and then maybe that allows you to relax enough, like, okay, that's easy to do.
Yes.
And now you can relax, and then you just naturally fall asleep.
Right.
So that's a really interesting way to think about it. And I know now, like when I'm sad or mad or whatever, like I'll literally try to, like, if I need to cry, I'm gonna try to cry as hard as I can. Like if I am angry, like I am going to like literally go and find a way somewhere to scream or scream into a pillow. Like I'm going to let that move through me so I can set it down and be done with it, you know, or at least for that moment in time, like, I can process through it. Where I find, I'm a huge fan of Dr. Gabor Mate.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
Trauma specialist. But he equates that, like, you know, how much energy it takes to push a beach ball down under the water. If we constantly avoid, if we don't address, if we don't let it work through, if we don't find other ways to cycle through how we feel, or we just don't let those feelings be present because they're quote unquote bad.
Yeah.
Which I don't think there's anything bad about feeling there. It's human.
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't think it's bad for men to cry. I don't think it's bad for women to cry. I don't think it's bad for children to cry. I think this is a natural human emotion, and we should normalize it a little bit. Like, let people move through it. Let yourself move through it.
Well, one, this is a big piece for sleep too, and this could almost sound so simple that it's looked over, but for further maybe credibility for this thing I'm going to suggest, one, if anyone's heard of Doc Parsley, he's a sleep doctor for the Navy SEALs. And, you know, certainly it has been credited as getting so many Navy SEALs off different Ambien and sleeping pills and what have you. And so if this group is able to take this suggestion, I think it can land that it's not necessarily a soft skill, even though it can sound like it. And the soft skill is to literally pen and paper write out what is kind of on our mind, even if it is that thing of like, well, I'm afraid I won't, you know, I have to get up so early tomorrow and I have this big thing, whatever, fill in the blank. Give it space. Exactly. And there's something interesting. I mean, we do have research to support something powerful in that process of getting this out of our heads onto paper. It feels like an action's been taken, right? And then you can also kind of draw a line down the center of this paper, left-hand side, all the things that are stressing you out, right-hand side, all the actions you can take. And if there's no action, if it's just like acceptance, you know, if someone is sick or something, and it's really just a matter of us being with that, then we can practice acceptance too, which does bring me to another piece that we can bring in with anticipatory anxiety, which is ACTI or ACT. And this is acceptance commitment therapy for insomnia. I've seen this be really helpful, both for myself and for other clients that are dealing with that mindset side of their difficulty with their sleep. And one of it is accepting, well, I'm awake right now and I am not sleeping. And in the acceptance aspect, it oddly removes the pressure. And one of the things that ACT brings in is saying, well, there's still benefits by laying in a supine position, you know, eyes closed in a darkened room, relaxing, and do it like what you were doing, like the body scan. All of that is helping to bring down the heart rate, relax, you know, tell the body that it's time to recharge. It can still repair in that state. Is it sleep? No, but there's still benefits. So it's another way to remove that pressure for the body and mind. And oddly, when we remove that, it's like Chinese finger trap. Then when you're not fighting it and trying to get out of it, then suddenly it works, you know?
Yeah. There's so much power in that. I love this. What are some of your favorite things that you've discovered along the way that help you sleep better, you know, both free and maybe investments that you made?
Yeah. Okay. Well, two of them that I have everyone start with, kind of no matter what, are these anchor habits. And it kind of applies in what you were saying when I have to get up earlier than normal, because the earlier than normal is like just a universal problem for all humans for the most part. And particularly though with the time zone shift, like you were talking to, like there's an old saying, like east is beast, west is best. So like when you're going westward, much easier. So like when you're going to go back to Vegas, you'll be like, I got this, easy. You know, so easy. Whereas when you go east, then that can be problematic because we can almost always stay up a little bit later, and then we build up more sleep pressure, which is one of the things we really want to.
That's what I've been experiencing.
Okay. Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
No, and I hate not sleeping well. Once you start sleeping well, there's nothing that could make me want to miss out. Almost nothing that can make me want to miss out on sleep. You know,
totally.
Like, let's go. You know, like go out. This. That. I was like. I'll see you in the morning. How about breakfast?
Yeah, exactly. I'm a much better version of me at breakfast anyway.
Better anyways.
Yeah, so exactly. I love that. No, and it's shocking to me too. This is still like this wild evolution because, like I shared, this happened for me about a decade ago. And before this, I always had this identity, which is a big problem with sleep. Like when you have these identity pieces, labels, I had it that I was a super night owl and I got my best work done at night and all of these things.
My gosh. So you sound like my mom.
Yeah, that was
my mom.
I was so convinced of this.
What was, and let me ask you, was any of this a social anxiety, do you think? Like, did you prefer to, because I think at night you're pretty lonely, usually pretty solitary. The rest of the world is quiet.
Yeah.
And you kind of get to just do you or just be you.
Yes.
Just anything.
Oh, totally. And we do have a kind of profile too for people that deal with insomnia. And, again, if anyone's like listening or watching this and saying, well, I'm not dealing with insomnia, I just want to optimize sleep. Many of the things that we're talking about are still going to apply there. But when we are dealing with particularly insomnia, then there can be like a personality type that seems to be more prevalent. And it tends to be perfectionistic, anxiety leaning, this overthinking, rumination patterns, all of these types of ways of being that can also lend itself to, skewing, late leaning, or this, that, and the other. And also many of us can have more sensitivities to mismatch of circadian cues, like we're talking about too. So some people can be more sensitive if they are not exposed to proper light-dark signals than others. So that's a really interesting piece too. But yeah, so all of these things, it's one of the places that we want to begin are these two anchor spots. And the anchor habits that we want to bring in, you've already touched on one of them. So the light dark piece. So anchoring with first thing in the morning, getting that bright light sun exposure, getting physically outside, not from behind a window, no hats, no, sunglasses, any of that stuff. And so you're getting that bright light exposure.
Tell people why it doesn't work through window. Cause I do think that's really important. Yes. Some people think I'm just going to sit behind a window. I'll look outside and work. And you have to actually expose your eyeballs.
Yes.
To the sun with nothing in front of them, ideally.
Exactly. Well, one, if we think about the average window, it's going to be adulterated light that's coming through versus full spectrum light from the sun. So that adulterated light is cutting through that beautiful rainbow effect that we get from actual sunlight. And so now you're getting the splintered light that's largely blue light rich. So, and those people that are concerned about, aging their skin and what have you are often, and unfortunately for us, because we've gotten this confusing information, many times living indoors, so commonly getting their light from behind windows, which is very blue rich, which is going to be damaging to the skin. And then from behind computers and all of this.
So if you're behind a window with daylight on you, you're getting all the bad things.
And none of the good things. Exactly. You're not getting that infrared light. That's the healing light, the type that, all of us will spend all this money to get these red light panels and stuff. And you can...
The sun can give it to you naturally.
Right. Yeah, it's exactly. And so it's healing. So there's so many benefits from that. So, just the easy workaround is kind of cracking the window if available to you. But more so is getting physically outside. But if you're in a car or whatever, crack the window, get the full spectrum light.
If I'm driving,
yes.
I try to just get at least the passenger side window, if I'm doing an early drive or whatnot. Midday sun, I think, doesn't affect what I understand your circadian rhythm as much. You definitely want it to be like that golden hour. The ones that the influencers will wake up early for so that they can get the good light.
The good light. That's the good light.
They call it the golden hour.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you can do this. So in case you're like, what is all this stuff about light? An app that I often suggest is the My Circadian app. And so you can get that app and then have it geotag wherever you are. I literally just went through this the other day with my mom. So I was walking her through how to do it for her. She's in Maine, so very different. So here in Austin, sunrise is around a little after like daybreak is around 6 a.m. ish, and then 6:30 a.m. for full sunrise. And then you're moving into UVA after that. Whereas in Maine, we're talking like in the 4s for daybreak, like 4 a.m. And then full sunrise around 5 a.m. And the reason I'm saying all this is it can be confusing.
What's the app again?
So it's called My Circadian app.
Okay.
And what's so helpful?
Yours?
No, it's not. Okay. But that's a great one. And there are others too. There's Circadian Life is another one. But all of these can help kind of walk you through. So it will geotag you. And while you're traveling, you can...
Definitely going to download it.
Yeah. Like I was just in Nashville just earlier this week. And so I had Nashville in there. So then I could kind of align what time I'm getting outside.
Okay. One of the questions that I had for you too was dealing with jet lag, which I think, right? Okay. So this app is helpful with getting that.
So for further credibility, I know I didn't share my entire whole story, but initially when I was traveling, it was like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to travel because I can't sleep. And we literally went back home to address my sleep, and because it had been a one-way ticket. We were going to be like digital nomads, like a la Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Work Week type thing. And then we went back to address my sleep, but And at first I was like, this is it. This is the end of my life. I'm never going to travel again. I could, and this is like catastrophic thinking.
It keeps mounting. That's the thing. It starts with something small and then it's like it affects everything. And when you don't sleep well, it affects everything.
It affects everything. Now, thankfully, after, learning what I learned and going down the rabbit hole, was able to successfully travel. So we did that for about 3 years in Southeast Asia, back and forth to New York. And so out of that, tons of long haul travel. So for anyone that's dealing with, especially long haul, I mandate that they get this other app called Time Shifter. And this is not my app either. But Time Shifter is a great app to manage that jet lag. You can also use it for kind of more short haul trips too, around like 3 hours difference. But what's amazing is they use NASA's algorithm to keep all their astronauts on time when they're shuttling through space. Every 90 minutes, the sun is rising.
Good enough for the astronauts. It sounds good enough for me.
Exactly. And not to mention it's beautifully designed too. And so it has a great, user interface. So it will show you like what time to be getting sunlight, so you just plug in your flight itinerary, but it will, it learns about you and asks you certain questions. And so in advance of your flight, then you can be adjusting, time shifting like a verb, so that you're actually intentionally shifting time. And so that's part of the goal, is that in days in advance, and especially for athletes and what have you, you can have a whole plan or itinerary that can show up so that you're really dealing with very minimal jet lag. Now, the only thing I'll call out about this app is it really plays with light, dark, and it plays with caffeine and melatonin. But I would also urge people to play with meal timing. And we have more research
I was going to say, that's one of my other tips.
Yes.
Sleeping well.
It's like so huge.
It wasn't until I started using an Oura ring that I realized that my HRV, my heart rate variability, which is a marker that anybody can use, but athletes, it's very important. It will tell us when is a good day to really push. Yeah. And when is a day that we might need to dial it back because we're just not totally recovered.
Yeah.
Now, I have spoken to other professional UFC athletes who are like, this thing never tells me that I'm ready. I'm throwing it away. Like every day it tells me it's a rest day. I'm like, are you eating right before bed? Because it tanked my HRV.
100%.
In the toilet. I was like, whoa. Because then I started diving into it and I was like, oh, instead of my body being able to go into restoration mode and producing growth hormone and healing me, it has spent all night digesting food, which could have been done during the daytime.
Exactly.
And if your insulin levels are elevated when you go to sleep, it quashes the production of a lot of the hormones and things that we need for sleep, but especially growth hormone. So anybody else who doesn't want to get in the sun because, of vanity reasons, I'm going to try to convince you otherwise. Growth hormone is something that's going to help you stay young and feel young and have a great, great skin, heal better. You want growth hormone at night. We produce less and less of it as we age. So don't gyp yourself on this. All you got to do is eat 2 to 3 hours before you go to sleep. Or do you think 3 or more?
So good. Okay. One, underscoring what you said about the growth hormone, especially since deep sleep tends to be on the first half of the night, which is when this large amount of this growth hormone process is occurring. And if we are digesting, especially during that first half, that can splinter the resources of the body. And now you're not being able to benefit from that as much. Now the timing, this is where it gets into this whole interesting world. One of our most listened to podcasts was with Dr. Sachin Panda out of the Salk Institute, where he has decades of research unpacking meal timing and circadian alignment and circadian health. So one of the things that he speaks to is 2 to 3 hours, like you were saying. Now I'll say what I have for people is having that be absolutely our conservative place to begin. And we have one of the larger Oura Ring databases from a sleep optimization perspective. So we have tons of data. And over the years, it's just been fascinating to see across the board just how impactful this one piece can be. Whoop also has, I was able to speak with some of the people on their team, and they have a study that they're putting together around the difference between 2 hours before bed having your last bite of food and 4 hours before bed having your last bite of food. And what the takeaway has been was that 4 hours was just wildly better results, right? But then there are other studies, and we need more studies, but there are other studies that showed early time restricted feeding where people are stopping around like 2 p.m. And stopping to have that last bite of food. Now, I'm not saying everyone stop at 2 p.m., but I am saying that we do see some really cool changes when people do start pulling this back even more so. Another dramatic example is Brian Johnson, who Don't Die on Netflix, if you're familiar, of course, yeah. And so his last bite of food is famously around 11 a.m. in the morning, having last bite of food. So there's all different ways that you can do this, right? But what I would have people do is often experiment, definitely begin with that 2 to 3 hours, then start experimenting with a little bit earlier too. So 4 hours, 5 hours. But the best thing to do is kind of the blueprint of nature. So when the sun is setting, then historically in nature, we wouldn't have been able to really eat after that because we wouldn't have like a refrigerator or a pantry or any of those things. And you can't really go hunting in pitch black, and right? So you wouldn't have eaten when it was dark out.
So you would be exhausted because you've been running around all day trying to capture food, and you would have woken up with the sunlight.
Exactly.
And you would be ready to go to sleep.
You would be, right. But much of this was just handled. And also, if anyone is, I hope that part of this can inspire, dare I say, fascination in this thing we do. A third of our lives, on average, 26 years are spent to sleep. Oh my God. Right? And yet we don't often look at it. And the average doctor has less than 2 hours of training, even at a Harvard Med, in sleep. So unfortunately, there's just a lot of a lack of knowledge or education around this. And I was a perfect example. I didn't know all the things that I was doing that were impacting me so negatively. I was doing everything wrong. I was eating so late, had alcohol, I would go to bed so late, just everything. So when you pull back
Did you do caffeine, or
caffeine?
Yeah, or after a certain time of the day. Some people aren't as affected by caffeine, but some people are. I think I'm pretty sensitive to caffeine. I don't actually like the way that it makes me feel, because I wake up feeling really good and really energized, and I'm like, I don't need caffeine. I don't need anything to help me wake up. Like, I'm awake. Perfect. I'm ready to go. Yeah. And if I drink caffeine, I almost get anxious. Like, I feel nervous. Yes. Like, I don't know how to explain, but it's just like I get a bit shaky and a bit like I feel like not calm anymore.
Yes, 100%. Now, the thing, if people listening like, I'm not giving up my coffee or whatever, then I would also recommend checking out pyrazanthine if they're, So pyrazanthine, do you know Sean Wells? Okay, so he kind of discovered this, kind of was able to extract this ingredient and make it more readily available. So it's this downstream effect of caffeine. And so essentially you're not having the same jittery effects as much as you might with caffeine, but it relates to sleep because it doesn't seem to affect adenosine as much. With adenosine is this aspect that relates to that sleep pressure that we're talking about, leveraging sleep pressure. I know a bunch of tangents, but even on that like anticipatory anxiety night, say if you are traveling and you know that you're going eastward and it's like a problem, you can leverage that sleep pressure or adenosine to help you over time. Now, it might be kind of tricky that first night, but if you still, and this is a big anchor habit of those 2 anchor habits, one being light dark, the second one being consistent wake up time, 7 days a week. And, some people can hear this and be like, I'm pretty much doing that. But half the time I look at their sleep data, they're often not really doing that. They might be doing that a chunk of the week, but then the weekend comes or something comes up and then they sleep in to cope and they say, oh no, that was just because fill in the blank. But there's so many just because that then that becomes a bit of a way of life, right? So they're dealing with what's known as social jet lag, and social jet lag is like this experience of jet lag, but you didn't get on a plane or what have you.
Right.
So all that to say that that's leveraging sleep pressure. So something like pyrazanthine doesn't impact adenosine in the same ways that coffee would.
You take in the morning? Do you drink it?
Yes, so you can drink it. You can have it in capsules. Some have it in kind of like a coffee form. Yeah. There's different ways of getting it, but that could be just because I'm always a fan too of if someone is like not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Some people are like, no, I'm not giving up my caffeine, and then they just don't address some of these things. Yeah. So then, okay, what if we try some alternatives? Same rules apply with alcohol. Like, so one of the things I love to be able to give for people for alcohol, because it's like the easiest thing to cut to really help support your sleep, And yet so many people don't want to give it up. So other state changers, I like to call them, are like kava, can be
kava.
Do you love it?
Yes.
Have you been to the kava bar here in Austin? Oh my God, right? How good is it?
Yes, it's so
like
good.
the big, like drink, like
It's so cute.
It's so good.
It's a total vibe.
It's a total vibe. And if you're not in Austin, you're like, what is it? You can get kava kind of liquid. You can get it in different drinks. So that's one.
Kava, you know, Cameron?
True. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So good.
So good.
So good. So that's one. Hard ketones are another one that actually has its own kind of version of alcohol in it, but it's ethanol free. And ethanol is really what predominantly impacts us with alcohol that really messes with like the next day.
I would like to try that because kava for me has pretty much replaced alcohol.
Totally.
Yeah,
right?
I don't say that I don't drink because it's not like there's nothing. I never had a like a negative association with alcohol as far as like it's never been like a problem for me.
Yes.
But I just choose not to now for the 9.9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, once in a while, I'll have a glass of wine or, maybe I'll have I like red beers, maybe if I was floating down the river or something, it's kind of nostalgic for me. Or if I was camping or something. But for the most part, I realize that I actually, now that I'm healthy and I've dealt with a lot of the traumas that I used to deal with, the things that I was trying to stuff away and snuff and not give space, I was just trying to cover them up.
Get that.
That's when alcohol was beneficial to me.
Yes.
When I've given those things space and I've moved through and I've learned about the health benefits and, not drinking, how negative it can be, and more health benefits of having kava and these other things as I'm constantly learning and curious about. I just don't have a desire to drink anymore. I just don't.
That's so amazing. Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a natural evolution for me too, where historically, and going back to that like overthinking, anxiety leading personality, I used to have it that all being out and socializing equaled a drink in your hand, for so long. But then as you keep going, especially, that's one of the, I think the beautiful things of wearables is that it becomes so clear. We know that.
Oh yeah. But I've seen what it looks like after drinking.
Oh, it's
me on my Oura Ring too.
100%. And I've also seen people say, oh, well, it's not so bad for me. But I would encourage them to go in deeper because some people, it's true that we might see that their sleep section of, say, the Oura Ring or Whoop is oddly not so impacted, at least in the short term. But then you look deeper and you can almost always, very rarely that I wouldn't see this, all these other impactors on our nervous system. So things like our heart rate, our HRV, respiratory rate, body temperature, blood oxygen. If you are dealing with sleep apnea, which is wildly common, you can bank on the fact that your sleep apnea is going to go up, snoring is going to go up, so many reasons. And for most people though, it's like, it does actually tend to help you with sleep onset. So falling asleep, oddly, but that's like where all benefits end. Because now you're asleep, but it's back to like the sleeping pills. It's kind of sedation versus real sleep. So then the quality of that sleep is messed up. Oh, I was so sensitive. I would get hot. I'd wake up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m.
Yep.
And then I'm just laying there and then anxiety rebounds. So that I'm like, all the relaxation benefits that I had from that, 1 or 2 drinks before, maybe more, who knows, then all come back. Yeah. So it's kind of a natural evolution, I think.
I would say when I have had a drink or two and then gone to sleep because I had been using Oura Ring for quite a long time now. So I have data before I prioritized my sleep in the ways that I do now, thinking that I'm always a good sleeper. So it's not a big of a deal.
Sure.
And then the information was just so powerful. Anytime that I would eat late or I would consume alcohol, even 1 or 2, I'd always get this little notification like, oh, your heart rate lowered late last night.
Yes.
So it didn't lower when you went to sleep. It took a long time for it to actually lower. And I was like, oh, why is that? And then, you start diving into it.
Yes.
You're like, oh, because my body's still working.
Exactly.
It's working. It's not resting.
And that's the situation that so many people get themselves in when they wake up in the morning and they're like zombie-like, and then they need the coffee, and then it's like all these coping mechanisms, and then they do the nap. All these things come up, and then it's just a vicious cycle. So good on you for then diving in, because that's my hope, is that this fascination gets sparked, because then when we transform this area of our life, our whole lives are transformed, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let me ask about this, because there might be some people listening to this and they're like, oh, well, that must be nice to just be able to wake up with the sun.
Yes.
I have to work at midnight, or I have to go to work at 9 p.m. and I work until, this.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you my experience at the UFC Performance Institute, where we have a lot of great technology, and they've begun diving into sleep for athletes.
Amazing.
And they will use bright lighting to help cue, because if now I recommend the sun first and foremost, but I was curious about this, even for jet lag potentially, if you're going east, right? Yeah. You want to start getting yourself maybe used to waking up before your sun comes up where you're on the West Coast.
Yep.
Like, are you an advocate or do you promote, a bright lighting people to help them get that wake up signal, that wake up time?
Yes. Okay. And I think especially shift workers, this could apply to different people that might have different schedules, or traveling a lot, but especially if you do have kind of an out of the norm sleep schedule and certainly is off kilter from the rhythms of nature, it becomes even more important for you to hear everything that we're talking about, because these are the groups that really can struggle. And we see things like fertility impacted, our cardiovascular health, our mental health, our waistline, so diabetes, our blood pressure. I mean, just
elevated cortisol all the time.
Right? Exactly. So many things. Cancers, certainly breast cancer and prostate cancer have clear links to kind of bright light exposure past our normal timeline, that we normally would be exposed.
So that's how it can be dangerous if you're having these bright lights later at night.
Yeah, but it's at the wrong time.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And so one of the other things I didn't mention in the beginning is that now today, on the other side of creating this company, one of the groups that we work with a lot is high stakes poker players. And they're in environments designed literally on purpose to confuse the circadian rhythm, right? So they're in...
it stresses me out now when I walk into a place like that and it's nighttime. I'm like... head down, got my blue light blockers on. I'm just trying to get, where it is. Because I live in Vegas, so sometimes it happens, or, you'll be like your fights or whatever, you're staying. Sometimes we would be staying at casinos, we
exactly.
hotels there. And it's like, I don't want to be awake right now. I'm actually going to bed.
Yes.
So yes. Okay. So talk about that.
Because those, what are the cornerstones of casinos? They have no windows, they have no clocks, they have tons of blue light at all hours of the day, lots of stimuli. And for these poker players, because they're high stakes players, so there's a lot of money on the line. So the stress is either of the kind of negative kind, like they just lost a lot of money, or can be eustress, so positive stress. Maybe they just won a lot of money, but either one is stressful for the body. And then it's like, okay, now go home and go to sleep right away. So that, especially when it's tournament players, so if they're going to be coming back the next day and need to be like cognitively intact for sometimes 10, 12 hours at a time. I mean, these are like cognitive athletes. So it's a big problem for them because this environment is like fighting against them. But I would say that the big thing to be aware of is that even though this can sound so foreign, that I would argue that many of us are closer to those poker players than we might realize. I often say in 2001, the EPA did a study. They found that the average American was spending well over 90% of their time indoors.
It's called the indoor generation.
Exactly. And so and they might think, well, no, I got the windows, and as we touched on. Now I will say windows are better than a closed, darkened room, obviously. But if the app that I was mentioning, the My Circadian app, will allow you to test the lux in your environment. So you'll be able to see, wow, okay, so even in a room with windows, often it's going to be sub 1000 lux, almost always. Now, there are exceptions, but it's a common number. So we might see like 200 lux in an average Starbucks, say, or like 500 lux, something along those lines. Whereas if you go outside on a bright day, it can be well over 100,000 lux. So this is a tremendous difference, and it tells the body a lot of information about what time it is and what to be doing when. And the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is kind of our master clock, is basically right behind the eyes. So it makes sense that it would be so linked up with this light dark piece.
Right.
So for shift workers, yes, you got to leverage and want to make sure that you're learning the skill set of your light dark aspects of things.
Which I love about your podcast. That's why we sleep as a skill set. I'm like, it's so true. Like anybody can sleep better with some effort.
Yes, exactly. And I want to absolutely underscore too that for anyone, because I've also seen people get way down the rabbit hole and get into the perfectionist realm with sleep. Now they're tracking, like I have some people that come my way and they're like 4 different trackers, and they're stressing out about their sleep. And now this is taking them away from, so our aim is it's a really weird paradox with sleep.
And it's different for everyone.
And it's different for everyone. And so it's like so strange because it's this mashup of prioritizing, supporting sleep, learning about sleep, with at the very same time, granting ourselves grace and humanity to, sometimes have a rocky night and trust that we'll get back on track, that we're, not fragile, that we're resilient. We had a sleep coach for the Olympics on the podcast. And one of the things he spoke to was almost really working with his athletes to prepare to have this idea that you're probably not going to sleep great the night before the Olympics. Like, you have all this stuff riding on this, has been your whole life building to this, and a lot of pressure. And if you do, great. But if not, trusting that with sleep banking beforehand, where as in like, you're really just prioritizing your sleep, taking care of your sleep, that you can trust that the body can rise to the occasion, essentially. Yeah. There's so much there from the mindset piece, but I would say the big takeaway with all of this is learning to mash up how to, from the first moment we start our day, knowing that the day is what has us win the nights and how we're managing this. And then just one last thing about the shift workers. One of the things I'd often have them do is create this circadian crafted day. And with our circadian crafted day, it's basically like, from the moment you first wake up, when are we getting that bright light exposure? What are kind of our routines and habits? How are we dealing with some of our stress load? How are we dealing with, meal timing, exercise timing, thought timing, which is a really fascinating one, that our thoughts are different at different points throughout the day, which, one study, if people are interested in this, we did an interview with one of the lead researchers of the Mind After Midnight study, and they found that our types of thoughts post midnight is very, very different than our normal day thoughts. So tend to be more stressful, more kind of binary, black and white thinking, catastrophic thinking, and sadly, suicidality rates going up in the wee hours of the morning. So, real world consequences of different changes and times of how the body is managing this. So I would argue that if someone is going to be living off of the normal rhythms of nature, it behooves them. It's even more important for them to really dive into this to support themselves. And that often will involve like faux treatments, I guess you could say, like light, dark, maybe red light therapies, but really dialed in rhythms.
Yeah. That's so fascinating and really, really great information. There was a couple things as we were talking about that I wanted to chime in on. I was like, I also use an app it's not directly for sleep, but does tell you about when the sun rises and when's the best time to get UV rays for vitamin D, which I know is really important for sleep.
Yes, so important.
It's a hormone. It's not just a vitamin. I don't know why we call it, just vitamin D.
I know it needs like a PR team.
It does. Yeah. It needs to really get it out there in the forefront because it's so important. But it's called D-Minder.
Oh, D-Minder's great.
You love that one?
Totally. Yeah.
I recommend that for people too. And especially so you can like ease in, you don't have to get like sunburnt. You can see what time of the day, and you start to get familiar, with like where you're at with your vitamin D levels and kind of tracking that and stuff, which I think is essential for sleep.
This is so part of the reason that I moved to Austin was because I had been in New York, which is a northern latitude location. So it's virtually impossible to get vitamin D through certain periods throughout the year. Mm-hmm. And so, unless, and then there's certain things you can do to mitigate this, but I would say for ease of lifestyle, moving to a southern latitude location, if available. I know this sounds ridiculous because people are gonna be like, "Are you kidding?" So if not, I'm not saying you can't get well at any latitude. You certainly can.
Well, honestly, and especially if you have a darker pigment of skin. This is nature. People near the equator generally have darker skin because they need more protection from the strong sun rays, and people north towards the light, north typically have lighter skin, as we see typically.
Yes.
But we don't spend enough time outdoors anyways now, so we're really behind the curve. So if again, you and I make effort probably to go outside, we're very mindful of it, but we still are going to spend, compared to how we would have, our ancestors would have been, a large amount of time inside.
Totally.
So makes sense that even though lighter skinned, that if we only get, we get 30 minutes, let's say it's a busy day and we get 30 minutes in the morning, it's a low UV,
yeah,
30 minutes, or an hour or two when we come down as the sun is going down, we're still not getting that much. Like at least we're in a place where we can have access to that. So it's something to keep in mind.
Yes. And this has real world, so we can talk about this quantifiably. So the Fitzpatrick scale is the scale that people can find themselves as far as their skin tone, where they fall. And this impacts directly the amount of time that you need to be outside to create sufficient vitamin D. And this goes to some real problems and inequalities that some of the, just kind of thrown out advice can be often guided for white, often, European nature, background for some of the recommendations from the studies that we're pulling, just these old school studies. And so with this, one of the things that we see is that it can be a recommendation that might apply for a lighter skin tone person. But if we go further down or further into this Fitzpatrick scale, the darker skin tone you have, the longer you need to be outside, yes, and the stronger of sun rays that you need. Yes. So then, and this can impact so many things. So certainly our sleep, but also our mood, our overall well-being, mitochondrial health. And we see things like, there's a really cool, if people wanted to take a look at MS rates, and which is linked with mitochondrial health, you can see the 37th parallel seems to be across the globe is a clear indicator of a very obvious marking when you go north of the 37th parallel, where there's way more rates.
Where's the 37th parallel?
So it actually goes right kind of above Vegas. So Vegas is on the kind of positive side. Yeah, you. So it's kind of like right below the 37th parallel, kind of goes in across California. And then it goes around the Carolinas and what have you. So if you're sub that, then way less rates of MS. If you go north of that, far more rates of MS, like quantifiably so. And
my grandma has MS, and she has the kind that it's like every time she has an attack, there's two different kinds. Like every time she has an attack, she'll still get back to like 99% of what she was before, but will never be like 100% again. But it's not the kind that's like chronic where, she has it all the time. So she has like less sensitivity in a hand, she'll feel more likely to drop things, and it's like slow degenerative kind of situation, but it's not the most extreme version of MS. But she was, my dad grew up in Connecticut.
Yeah.
So
those northern latitude locations, 100%. Yeah. So for my northern latitude location clients, so if people are like, what are you talking about? So I need to move or not? Well, that's kind of ridiculous. So I'm not saying that necessarily, but I'm saying that we want to, one, educate of just how important this is. Two, if we are in northern latitude locations, a couple of things that I suggest for some of my clients. So one, you can get vitamin D from a lamp source, which many people don't realize.
I was on Celebrity Big Brother 3, and I wanted that so bad.
Oh my God, that I didn't realize that. And that is amazing because
we were locked inside for like 6 months. And I thought we were going to have access to the outside, and we had this little faux outdoor area, but they had like, that semi-transparent kind of tarp plastic, cheap throwaway plastic people throw it down for when they're painting or whatever, like room they throw it for. It was like that, but it was covered. So like you didn't really get real daylight. And my circadian rhythm was a disaster on that show. After 6 weeks of being under those bright lights, cameras all the time, and like I would try to go to sleep. There wasn't clocks. There was one clock in the microwave. You'd have to go all the way through the house. It's always stressful. And then sometimes they would wake, be like, don't fall asleep, or they'd have I would fall asleep, or they'd have to wake you up for an interview. And then you go in this room and it's like bright lights in your face. Yeah. I was like, this is terrible.
Sleep nightmare. Yeah,
it was
totally. Okay. Well, so smart of you to be like, could I bring in some sort of light source? So one is called the Spurdy lamp, and that got, lots of popularity, went up in popularity during COVID because we linked vitamin D with, like the pandemic piece, viral load, et cetera. So that's one lamp you can get.
Your immune system a lot, vitamin D.
Exactly. Yes. And so then another one is with chroma. So chroma has one that I really like because it's split with red light too. So you're not just getting pummeled with this bright light, which you are getting some bright light with the chroma, but it's mixed with this red light too.
How intense are these? Like if you...
So intense, you can burn. Like you can literally burn your skin. Okay. So you have to be super careful with them.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're not cheap either, so they are an investment. But if you were to get some of those, the fact that you can build, measurably your vitamin D load from a light source is pretty nuts. Yeah. So you could use that as kind of like a supplement. And some people say, well, why wouldn't I just take an actual supplement? And yet we do have concerns that we're not getting many of the same benefits with the supplementation of vitamin D versus actually getting that light source.
It depends how you absorb it, I think, a little bit and stuff. And it's going through your stomach. It doesn't always mean that if you take 5,000 or 10,000 IUs that you're actually going to get it. And that's hard to measure.
Exactly.
It's a little difficult. I mean, the sun does a beautiful job, and I don't think there's any supplement for it. But
totally.
Sure, if you can eat more vitamin D or you take, I'm sure it's better than nothing. But, bang for buck.
Yeah.
Prioritize the sun.
Prioritize the sun. Exactly.
Okay, if you're under one of these lamps, though, it was a question I was going to ask. Are you getting the wrinklings, the UV, right? That people are,
Yes.
You need that, right, to get vitamin D.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But at the same time, that's where the crucial piece of that red light aspect can come into play, because
skin healing.
Yeah,
the sun also heals the skin.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Exactly. And so this is where it gets so layered. And then also, if we are spending so much time indoors, for many people, the concern is, could there be a misattribution error of this whole skyrocketing? Because it doesn't quite make sense numbers wise, where now so many people are wearing a sunscreen, we're indoors all the time, and yet skyrocketing rates of skin cancer. So how does that add up?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess some people could make an argument. They're like, oh, well, people are spending so much time inside that when they go outside, they get really, really burnt.
Yes.
Of course, burning is not good for your skin or for skin cancer. That's why I'm always, at the moment that I see that UV rays are starting, I'm always getting my kids out in the sun all the time to try to get them to
solar callus.
That. Yes, to build. I also make my own sunscreen now because I think that the chemicals that are in sunscreen are worse for you than probably just being in the sun, to be honest.
Totally. Yeah.
Or be a sun or shade person. Just get in the shade. Like if you need, like if you've had enough. And that's where deminder is helpful.
Yes.
I always look for that for my kids. And when I was down here, so we stayed, we were in Waco before this. We stayed at Camp Fimfo, and I'm looking at the deminder and I'm like, it's a UV index of 12. I'm like,
you're like, oh man,
my gosh.
Yeah.
I was like, lather the sun. We're using my homemade sunscreen and everything. I was like, lather it on, reapply it. I was like, and normally I'm not very much of a Nazi like that because I'm like, my kids are tempered. I do everything to try to protect them, or I'll put the clothes, but I'm like, look, this will burn. This will burn.
Yeah, this will burn.
Because in Vegas, we haven't seen anything above an 8 yet. So I was like, to be out for hours in water play. Yeah. But we were successful. We did not burn.
Great.
Yeah. I had a little, I think I forgot to put it like on the inside here. I was like a little bit. Maybe I did and I didn't reapply a little bit, but the kids were good. We got through it relatively unscathed.
Yes.
But yes.
Oh, you. Gosh. Okay. I love that. Yeah. Cause, this can be such a fine line, and this is such an important piece, and everything we do at Sleep is a Skill is really, on the blueprint of that light dark piece. So getting brighter days and darker nights, and putting into there all these other, cause these are known as kind of zeitgebers or time givers to the body. So light dark is a time giver. Temperature timing is a time giver. I know you'd asked, like, what are some of the things that I do for sleep, and cooling mattress toppers have been game changing.
I need that for my RV.
Yes. I mean, it just
especially
makes
here. It's hot.
It's hot.
It's really
exactly.
Hot in an RV. Yeah. As we're going through the road trip, that would be amazing.
It makes such a difference.
Okay. What are some brands? Cause I've thought about this. I've also thought about grounding. Is there ones that's grounding and cooling?
I know. That's what what I want. I know. Unfortunately. You can do some workarounds. So I've been able to do certain kind of strips of grounding over top, so you're still getting, but more on the feet. So that's one aspect. Okay. But the main two that I recommend are Chili Sleep and 8 Sleep, and they are both really, really great. Different things for different people. Now with chili, basically you can have on one side. So that's, an option for people if they just have like a twin mattress or just for them or they're single or whatever.
Does the ground outside naturally have a cooling effect?
Yes. Oh my God. This is one of my favorite things. Yes.
I'm like, okay, so we would have been sleeping on the ground.
This is one of my favorite topics. Exactly. Because people would be like, come on, do you really need to have this fancy thing? You're talking about like ancestral health and all this stuff. But it actually
already sleep on cushy, elevated beds with pillows.
Which is so not how we evolved.
Right,
exactly. Right. No, you nailed it. And so that's one of the coolest things is that you can make an argument that oddly cooling mattress toppers are bringing us back or mimicking how we used to sleep. And if we used to sleep largely on the ground, which would be the coolest part in the environment, and then you can also make this argument, there are theories that maybe why like weighted blankets are so valuable or calming to us could be like heavy hides or things that we used to use on top of us. It's, a little bit.
And there's something about it that feels safe.
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know how to dial that back in, but
like a tactile experience and a pressure,
it's a potential
basically
too that children, like we got it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a potential that children maybe were like covered, you know what I mean? Like at night too. Like if you think about that, like for safety purposes or anything like that, that they had things on them to like hide them or even while they were taking naps, right? You think like you're going to hide your child in something to make sure that they're safe if you had to forage. I mean, maybe you're carrying a child, but anyways, there's a lot of, thought that you could think back to why potentially something weighted on us or, your parents' arm over you or sleeping with, these things just feeling safe and comforted.
100%.
Like children all the time. Like when I read to my daughter, she's like, she wants to be like, to get with me, on me.
Feels like a hug or something. Yeah.
Embraced.
Yes.
By me. And I think by that safety aspect. When I was on Celebrity Big Brother 3, I'd never used weighted blankets before, and it helped me so much. It was like became a big fan of weighted blankets at that point. Yeah, because it just was like, I just feel safer.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, previously there weren't as many studies to point to. A newer one just kind of came out fairly recently that seems to further underscore that kind of subjective experience that so many people would have. So there is some research that people could go to as to a why for this having an impact, but certainly the experiential piece of it is very clear. And then the other thing too, I feel bad because I feel like I have so many questions for you, so we'll have to do some sort of part 2. But one thing I would love to do real quick is we do ask every person we have on the podcast 4 questions about their own sleep. So maybe that could be a good way to get in there. Okay. So our first question is always, what is your nightly sleep routine looking like right now? And it could involve travel or whatever could be helpful.
Oh, absolutely. So, I'll talk about currently travel right now. I have taken red tape and I've covered our RV lights.
Love it.
Okay. So we have this very like kind of, it's a fun vibe. It's very, it's very romantic in our RV. Once the lights go down, everything's red. The kids enjoy it. They think that it's neat. And we tape over any other lights, like blue lights, anything like that. We're making sure we're really getting it very dark in the RV. And then the moment that it's time to wake up, I'm pretty light sensitive. So as soon as I notice that, light's coming in from the cracks, I begin to lift the window shades gently so that everybody can start to get, I wake up and I'm feeling good. And then I'll kind of slowly, so it's not abrupt to the kids or anything, but I'll slowly start bringing those up because I want that outside light to come indoors. I do the same thing when, at home, I close everything down as much as I can, and then even a little tiny creep in of light it's going to wake me up because it's been so dark that when the sun comes out, even coming through the cracks of the shades or behind, the curtain, like I will be sensitive to it because it's a drastic change from it being pitch black. Yeah. Then I will begin to open everything. I go outside, with that 5 minutes, 2 to 10 minutes. I love listening to Andrew Huberman's podcast, by the way, about
so helpful
sleep health. Okay. Mm-hmm. I also make sure that the lights at night are off or very low. Everything is kind of that amber toned. I've switched my light bulbs out to those. Yes. And I'm a fan for the children of night lights because I learned in that podcast that the way that our eyes are, the sun, when it's above us, shines down into our eyes, which we have receptors for light to wake us up. Yeah. It's just part of our biology. Yeah. So when we have strong overhead lights at night, it's not good for us.
Yeah.
So I also have I have a lamp actually in our bathroom. It's like nobody has lamps in their bathroom.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
But I do because I'll either set it on the floor or the shelf. I'll cover it with like something to make it like amber tone because I can't adjust it. Unfortunately, the lamp doesn't have a dimmer on it. But I'll manually adjust it to be dim. But I want it low so it's below my line of sight.
Yeah.
And
low solar angle. Yes.
Low solar angle. And children are actually almost twice as sensitive to melatonin suppression than adults are by this bright light. So if your children are having trouble sleeping at night, a really good tidbit to take away is like get lights low and like low on the literally physically low.
Yeah.
But also dim.
So good.
This helps so much with my children. I think they have pretty good little circadian rhythms themselves.
I'm so happy to hear because I think that there's we see so many like sales of melatonin for kids like through the roof.
Yes, and that's a hormone. I mean, we don't really know. I'm not saying that it's not good or safe.
Right.
What I generally understand is that melatonin is not something that you would want to use beyond like a 2-week thing, which I almost never use melatonin unless I'm like going over to see my friend in Switzerland or something. And
Sure.
Maybe on that occasion when I land and I'm like wide awake, okay, then maybe I'll use it. But then I'm trying to wake up with the sun again. I'm trying to get right on that schedule. But those are a couple things, there's probably a little bit more than that. Of course, I already talked about relaxing and things, but those are the big things.
Love those.
I'm a light guru. I'm very particular about light exposure.
I'm like that too. It's huge. Oh, I love those. And for your kids too. So like the whole family is benefiting from this.
And I try to get out for evening light if at all possible. Like as the sun is going down, I know that can actually cue your body again that it's ready for sleep. And so then even if you do have blue light, there's Andrew Huberman was talking about this, how if you get evening light, you will also be a bit protected of the harmful effects of blue light. So
blue light inoculated, essentially.
Right,
yes, exactly.
So I try to do that with my children too.
I love that. Okay, well, that could bleed into our second question, which is, what does your morning sleep routine look like right now? And I say that intentionally with the idea that how we start our day can impact our sleep.
Yes, perfect. So when I first feel myself waking up, it is this beautiful sensation where I almost get a tingling feeling on my skin, almost like the hair on my body is like standing up. It's not exactly how it is, but it's like this kind of wave, if you will, that comes over me. It's like I take this deep breath and I'm like, I'm clearly now awake.
Oh,
and it's just,
I love that.
Yeah. Maybe it's unique to my body, but it's very clear to me. It's like, okay, we are awake and what a beautiful feeling. Like I'm not stressed. I feel rejuvenated.
I love that.
And then I lay there for about 5 minutes and I decide what I want out of today. And I think about that. I'm like, okay, what do I want out of today? Do I want to make sure that I'm, and I kind of run through my vision of the day.
How long have you been doing this? So that's amazing.
At least a year, maybe more.
Okay.
A year and a half. And this is a really, pretty steady morning ritual for me. I take that first 5 minutes. It's to myself. I'm not looking at my phone. And I'm just thinking like, what is it that I want out of today? And, some of it's kind of like to-do list of little things. It's not stressful, but it's like, okay, that's right. Okay, I have this podcast. Okay, I'm going to prepare a breakfast for the kids before I go. Oh, and I definitely want to make sure I get my workout.
Yes.
Oh yeah. And I want to go see this thing, or I want to go do this. Okay. I want to make sure I do that. Okay, great. I think I have a little bit of a game plan for the day. Then I pop my little head off the pillow and I run right on my deck.
Oh my God. I love that.
I look towards the sun and I try to get, that 2 to 10 minutes of exposure.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And I love it because that's a huge piece of sleep management too, is creating your day and life, arguably, versus, reacting or responding. So that's beautiful. Okay. Amazing. I actually haven't heard anyone say it like that. So that's so cool. Okay. And then our third question would be, what might we visually see on your nightstand? I know we're in a bed environment, but so what do we see on your nightstand or maybe in your environment if you're traveling?
Right. So right now I have Metabolic Freedom on.
Oh, Ben!
Yes.
Love
so
Ben.
Good. I'm just starting it, but I usually have a couple books. And I have my blue light, or my blockers, my glasses. I have my Oura Ring charger, which my Oura Ring actually just stopped working. It was so frustrating. It was like I put it on the charger one day and then it just like stopped. So I need to buy a new one. Okay. So I have that. I usually have floss picks because.
Oh my God. I just ordered some on Amazon last night.
There, oddly enough, they are right there on my nightstand. And then I have like this, what is the supplement? Is it L-citrulline? I think it's
L-theanine,
maybe. It's one that it's not exactly for sleep, but it's for if your insulin levels are low, it helps your growth hormone.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, sure.
Yes, maybe we could put it in the show notes because forgive me, I'm just not for sure, but I think it might be citrulline. It's something that I learned from Andrew Huberman. So of course, as I learn these things secondhand, sometimes it evades me when I try to recall exactly what it is, but I have it there. And, when I'm doing that good piece of like, if I know that I've had 4 hours since I've eaten, I'm like, I'm going to give myself a little boost. I'm training hard. I'm a bit sore. If my body's cueing me that I need more restoration, that's the time that I will take that.
That's great.
I also have my red light device there. It's kind of a crowded nightstand. If I'm going to be honest, it is not, it's not cute and pretty. It's got a lot of things that I use.
Yes.
And it's
utilitarian. Yes.
It's a little crowded.
I love it. Okay. No, it's perfect. And they all have great use cases. So amazing. Yes. Okay. And then the fourth question would be, so far to date, what would you say has made the biggest change to the management of your sleep, or said another way, biggest aha moment with managing your sleep?
Well, I feel like understanding that the only part of our brain that is exterior is our eyes. And how important our eyes are to our sleep.
Yes.
We just don't think about that. We're in a modern world that's go, 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 and it's pressing us for our time, and we're always trying to maximize. And so we lay down and we have our phones right in our faces. And I can't describe to you how frustrating it is to sometimes see people like my mom, people that I care about, or Johnny, I'm like, turn your brightness down.
Yeah.
The sun has set.
Yeah.
You don't need a flashlight in your face.
Yeah, exactly.
The brightness all the way up on the screen. Well, I can't see. Well, I was like, well, you're not seeing because your eyes are dilated down to like be able to deal with this bright light.
Yes.
So then of course, when you first turn it down, you haven't given a chance
to adjust. Yeah, exactly.
So I have night shift mode on my phone. I actually also like, which I'm guilty of. I'm definitely going to be on my phone at night in my bed.
Yes.
I'm not going to change that. I don't think.
And there are ways to mitigate, like it doesn't necessarily have to be, so it's being mindful of like what the content is on our phones and the lighting. Yes, so it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
You feel like whether it keeps you up or not. Now I have made it, I've justified this for myself that this doesn't affect me negatively.
Yes.
And maybe it does. I'm probably just making excuses, but I sleep well. And this is one of the things that I feel like I don't need to budge very far on because I have these weird little things that I do that I think make a difference. I put my red light blockers on, I turn my brightness down, I have the orange light on my phone, and I'm also tilt the phone away from me. So it's a little bit more facing the ceiling as opposed to above me where it could go down into the light receptor.
Yes.
So I tilt that and I kind of almost peek over the top of it.
Yes. Okay. These are beautiful. Okay. So you have a whole kind of, litany of things that you're doing to support your sleep, and clearly your results are there. Like that's the big thing. If it's not working, then we address things. But when it comes to things like the use of the phone, we can actually sometimes backfire. There can be cases when people have like this 27-step process to fall asleep, and then they become stressed about their sleep. So if it's bringing us joy, if it's not a problem, like lean into it. Yeah. So I love all these, and I feel like we could talk 9 million hours. And I feel like there's still so many questions that
You're going to be in Vegas again. You said you come out there often. That's
yes.
So we can definitely do a part.
We'll do a part 2. Okay. Fantastic. So, for people listening and they're like this amazing human that clearly is committed to our health and well-being, they want to be a part of your world. How can they best kind of follow you and do all that?
Well, if you want to follow me, it's usually just at Misha Tate, MIESHATATE. My website is a great way if you want to, subscribe to my newsletter. I try to keep people apprised of all the fun things that I'm doing.
Yes.
And, my favorite things and products and tips that I'm learning along the way as a professional athlete. Having fought in the UFC for so long, I almost say it's like, I'm approaching 40.
I just turned. So
right. So I'm still in the top 15. I'm still competing. I have 2 children. I've just learned so much along the way, but it's a chance for me to pay it forward is through my podcast. And that's where I'd really love people to follow this next chapter of my life. It's called Built for Growth. and, just listen and take away from all the great experts, and yourself included, Mollie. Thank you so much for sharing this today. And then as well for you, since we're going to share this mutually.
Yes, I know, our split podcast. Yes. I love that we rolled it. This is perfect. So you can go to sleepisaskill.com. There's all kinds of things that you can do to take action on your sleep, whether you're just kind of sleep curious or really struggling. We have a sleep assessment you can take and to get kind of targeted information back to support your sleep automatically. We have Oura Ring audits. We do a lot of these where we audit your Oura Ring data, give you tailored things back that can support shifting your sleep results.
Also, next time we talk about, let's get you off, but I'd love to talk about sleep in women's cycles.
We'll have
to talk about that.
That's a whole fascinating topic. Yes, exactly. Okay, we'll do that. And then one of my favorite things is my newsletter. I've been sending that out for almost 7 years, every Monday, never missed a Monday. And so I really enjoy writing those. And it's been a great way to kind of maintain community. So people will send back like screenshots of their like Whoop band stats and their, their Oura Ring, their BioStrap, or whatever. So really encourage people to also share, things that they're getting out of that. We have online courses. And then if people are looking for additional support, really struggling, then of course we have one-on-ones and other things. But truly my mission on the planet is to help support people with their sleep. I really feel like I dodged a bullet. I feel like I could have gone down the path of still taking medication for sleep, and a whole as we talked about, this can open a whole can of worms. And so I just really want for people to know that there's this whole path available, that this can actually be one of the greatest gifts of your life is this period with your sleep. And even if people are listening, they're like, my sleep's fine, I just want to improve it, that can be an opportunity too in growth and development.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. Well said. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yes.